Congratulations, you found the best video ever about choosing a handgun for beginners. And I say best video ever because I'm just going to pick it out for you. When I was choosing my first handgun, I bought all the magazines, the paper kind that you read. I read all the forum posts. I did all the research. I loved it. That was part of the fun for me. There are plenty of videos out there that'll help you kind of pick and choose if you want to dive in deeper. Not here though. I'm just straight up telling you what to buy. I find a lot of beginners in my concealed handgun courses, they don't want to nerd out about guns. They just want me to tell them what to get instead of dicking around on the internet for 12 hours. So I'm here for you, guy with no time for that. Obviously, the number one most important factor in choosing handguns intended purpose. For this video, I'm assuming that you're using this for personal defense, like home defense, concealed carry, maybe both. If this is a nightstand gun, if this is a concealed carry handgun, we'll cover a few options for you, just a few. We'll keep it limited. Number two factor, your ability. That's kind of a combination between like your physical and your skill level. Essentially, there's a threshold. There's a little line here. Maybe I'm a little worried about you shooting yourself. That's the line, and I'm assuming most of you guys are on this side of the line, and the guns on this side of the line are different than the guns on this side of the line, if that makes sense. Number three factor, I would say probably reliability, because who gives a shit about anything else if you can't count on this pistol to protect you when it matters? Purpose, ability, reliability, all critical. If you have ability, you're a confident shooter, and you've got purpose, a 10mm hand cannon that you know how to use, who cares if you don't know if this gun's going to go bang instead of click reliably? Or you have a 22 short two-shot Derringer, something unsuitable for your purpose. Or you're my 90-year-old grandmother, I hand you a 50 cal Desert Eagle and you're not even going to be able to load it, much less shoot it. Ability, right? After that, we've got a whole bunch of other stuff: price, accuracy, features, capacity, all kinds of bullshit that you probably shouldn't focus on too much if you're really a beginner and not just a regular viewer who's here to break my balls a little bit and see what I say, which I bet half of you are. Thank you for being here, by the way. I'll take those little sub factors up as they come along, because as I see it, those are really tiebreakers for you. Your main priority is to get something that's going to be effective for your purpose within your ability to use, and something reliable. If you don't know me, my name's James Reeves. I've been shooting all my life. I've owned 2 gun stores. I'm a firearms lawyer. I've written a couple books about it. I've been a concealed handgun instructor in Louisiana and Florida, Louisiana State Police certified for well over a decade now. I'm a Thunder Ranch adjunct instructor. I've written for the Firearm Blog for, 13 years. I've made videos here on TFB TV for over 10 years. So I know a little bit about what I'm doing. Okay, purpose, self-defense. Let's start with caliber. How much horsepower do you need for it to fit your purpose? If I'm giving one answer in autoloaders, 9mm, and revolvers, I'm going to say 357 Magnum. But James, 357 Magnum, that's a big one, isn't it? Yeah. Settle your tits for a second. Hear me out. All 357 Magnums will shoot 38 Special. Not all 38 Specials will shoot 357 Magnum. I'm not going to be really upset with you if you want to stick to 38. If you just want to buy a 38 revolver, it's a little bit weaker than 9mm, but also if you're getting a 38 dedicated revolver, 38 only, that won't take 357, you can get something a little bit smaller, a little bit cheaper than a full bore 357. Now, if you get a 357, it'll be more expensive, probably going to be heavier, but you can shoot 38 out of it until you're ready to step up to 357. And 38 is going to be a lot easier to shoot out of a 357 because of that additional weight the 357 frame will have. So that's why I like 357, but I'm not upset if you get 38 for a revolver. For autoloaders, the only possible complaint anyone could ever have about 9mm in an auto is that you can get more powerful calibers. However, at this point, pretty much all the people who get paid to shoot other people are using 9mm. It's cheap. 9mm handguns have great capacity. It's low recoil. It's easy to shoot. Tons of options for handguns in 9mm, and it meets the FBI standard for lethality. If that's too much, move in descending order to 380, 32 ACP. Beyond that, it's kind of a toss-up between anything that starts with a 2 and just getting a German Shepherd and a 7-iron. I'd throw out there that 5.7 by 28mm truly becoming a viable alternative, because more ammo, more guns available. It recoils like a 22 Magnum, but on paper should be about as lethal as 9mm on paper. Let's start with revolvers. Would I rather have a magazine-fed, auto-loading, semi-automatic pistol? Yes. But I'd also rather have a shotgun. But I'd also rather have an AR-15. But each of those is more complex, more difficult to use from a beginner's standpoint. Revolvers have had a funny history over the past 50 years. In the 70s and 80s, they were the most issued handgun to police because they were more dependable than the autos of the time, the semi-auto handguns of the time. After the Wonder 9 started to prove that 9mm semi-automatic handguns could be just as reliable, revolvers started getting phased out, but they were still being pushed as great guns for personal defense because they're reliable. But times have changed. As we sit here today, a lot of people would say that I'm a FUD for recommending a revolver, and I don't totally disagree with that. Revolvers are more expensive typically. They have no reciprocating mass, so they tend to recoil harder than semi-automatics. And even though 38 from a revolver will probably recoil more than 9mm from a semi-auto, 9mm is slightly more powerful. You're only getting 5 or 6 round capacities in most revolvers versus 10 to 20 rounds in most 9mm. So why on earth would you get a revolver? Well, I like revolvers not only for their reliability, but for their simplicity and the fact that someone with limited hand strength can operate one. Not to mention they're extremely safe to use. I'm sure it exists, but I don't know of any revolvers that have safeties. In the case of revolvers, that's perfectly fine. Don't get hung up, by the way, guys, in this video. Don't get hung up on having a safety. Safeties are just another step that you're going to have to remember before you fire the gun. And on a revolver, the safety is in the form of like a 15-pound trigger pull. If you want to send off a shot with a revolver, with the hammer down, you got to be really sure because it's going to take, in most cases, upwards of 10 pounds of pressure to do that. Let me give you a little demo of this. This is a Smith & Wesson 327. Fancy little handgun. I think it costs like $1 gajillion because it's made out of like scandium and titanium. Holds 8 shots of 357 Magnum. If you got the money, you just want to buy something awesome for concealed carry, this is actually a great 357-38 option. But let me show you what I'm talking about with the trigger. So when I pull the trigger, it's a double action. That means it's going to cock and release, 2 actions, cock and release the hammer. See that? Now this gun's got a pretty good trigger. Yeah, 11 pounds, 13 ounces. So that's almost a 12-pound trigger. So you are going to be damn sure when you pull the trigger on this thing that you want to send that shot off. And that works in a way as a safety. You're not going to accidentally do it, right? Now, the downside, like an 11 or 12-pound trigger pull is kind of a shitty trigger pull, and that will kind of lead to shitty accuracy. The upside, most revolvers give you the option to, watch the trigger here, cock the hammer. You see what just happened? Now it's a single action, right? Because we performed the first action of cocking the hammer. The trigger is not doing that. We are. So what do you think is going to happen now? 4-pound trigger, right? So we cut the trigger weight down by 8 pounds. The point being, if you're like, oh man, like I might have to shoot this guy, but if I do it, I want to be more precise. I don't want to use a 12-pound trigger. You have the ability to give yourself the option where now you've actually got a very light trigger. That's going to make you more accurate. You're not going to be slapping the trigger. Another downside, on nearly all revolvers, it's impossible to decock the hammer without pulling the trigger. And that's how I had my first and only negligent discharge. When I was 14 years old, my dad's secretary was carrying a revolver with the hammer cocked fully loaded in her purse. You can't unload the gun because the cylinder's locked. There's no decocker on these revolvers. There's no safety. Your only option is to rest your thumb on the hammer and pull the trigger at the same time. Ease the hammer forward. Well, my thumb slipped and I cracked a round off in my dad's conference room, which obviously was super embarrassing. I'm embarrassed even talking about it today, but the only person who died was a lawyer, so no one cared. I'm kidding. The gun was actually pointed in a safe direction. No one was hurt, but oh my God, you can imagine it was humiliating. Everyone in the office can hear a gunshot. In summary, negatives: low capacity, slow to reload, higher recoil, can be tricky to decock safely. Positives: heavy trigger pull acts as a safety, extremely reliable with little or no maintenance, simple operation, and this is a big one, especially with people who lack hand strength It's pretty easy to take the cylinder out and load it up and get it charged and ready to go without much hand strength. Another plus of revolvers, pretty easy to buy one and not fuck up. What I mean by that is if you buy a revolver in 357 or 38 and it's manufactured by Ruger or Smith & Wesson, you're probably going to be just fine, better than fine. You'll have like an heirloom quality gun. Just make sure you're buying the right size gun. So let's get into that. If you're looking for a bedside gun, the two traditional legends are going to be either the Ruger GP100 or the Smith & Wesson 686 and 357 Magnum. Both are about $1,000 MSRP. Both are great guns. If I'm just going to take one of these out of the box and not buy any accessories for it, I think the Ruger shoots better because the factory grips far better. If you think you're going to tune it or accessorize it at all, the 686 will give you more options, lots of holsters available for it, whatever. Super popular gun. If $1,000 too much money for you, I totally understand. I think you could go with a similar Taurus or a Rock Island 200 series. Taurus is a Brazilian company. They actually made Beretta's revolvers in the 80s. Rock Island is from the Philippines. They make decent, cheap revolvers modeled after old Colt patterns. But Smith & Wesson or Ruger, going to be worth the extra money and worth passing on to your kids. If you want a revolver that can pull double duty for concealed carry and kind of a nightstand gun, Smith & Wesson Model 60 was the first stainless steel 357 Magnum revolver ever made. They still make it. It's a great gun, weighs 21 ounces. Even though it's all steel, it's the same weight as a Glock 19, so it's pretty light. The Ruger SP 101 and 357 Magnum, also a great choice. Going to be about a quarter pound heavier, harder to carry, but lighter recoiling. The bad news, either of those options will drop you down to 5 rounds instead of 6. If you want something strictly for concealed carry, pretty much any 38 or 357 J frame from Smith & Wesson or the Ruger LCR series, both excellent choices, but I promise you these guns are going to suck to shoot. Even if you're getting a 38 special model, even if you get a 357, you're shooting 38 through it, still going to suck. You're not going to enjoy it, which means you're not going to go to the range, which means you're not going to practice, which means when you do actually go to the range, you're going to flinch like Tina Turner when someone drops an encyclopedia in the room, and you might start developing bad habits like a flinch. So I'd only go this route if you can only own one gun, and it has to be as small as possible. Like my Uncle Clint Smith says, when you're carrying them, they can't be small enough. When you're shooting them, they can't be big enough. Therein lies the conundrum. There are a lot of niche models and calibers, makes, whatever for revolvers I didn't get into for the sake of brevity, but I think the advice I just gave applies to like 80-90% of new shooters. Now let's talk autos. For women, the elderly, Atlanta Falcons fans, autoloaders might be a bit too complicated. You've got to put rounds in the magazine, which can be tough, especially once it starts to get full. Then you have to properly seat the magazine, and then you have to rack the slide with some force to make sure that a round gets chambered. Not only is that a lot of steps, but it takes a lot of hand strength to do it too. Some people just don't have the ability, like we were talking about. They don't have the skill, the coordination, or the physical strength to use a semi-automatic handgun. But let's say you're not afraid to get a little training. Let's say you're capable to use something that requires this kind of hand strength. It's a little bit more complex. Now the world of auto-loading pistols is open to you, and that's wonderful because autos are nearly as reliable as revolvers these days, although you're going to need to do, and I mean minimal, half-assed job with maintenance. More than revolvers, but not as much with a good auto. You also get substantially more ammunition in an auto. This is a SIG 226 with an 18-round magazine, plus one in the chamber. They're also much softer to shoot because you've got that reciprocating slide with this recoil spring here, sops up some of the recoil. You can also reload them much faster than an auto, although I'll go ahead and make a note here and say John Correa, if you're familiar with him, he runs a great channel, Active Self-Protection. He says he's analyzed thousands of shootings over the years, and only once or twice has he ever seen a reload in a civilian gunfight. So just think about the fact that fast reloads may not be as important to you as you think they might be. John Wick. With autoloaders, your options are intimidating, staggering. There's so many options. I'm going to try to keep it simple for you. That's the point of this video. You have hammer-fired handguns. That's this. Looks like a revolver, right? You've got a hammer here. You've got a trigger. When you pull it, it cocks the hammer, and the hammer slams into the back of the firing pin. With a striker-fired pistol, there's no external hammer. You have essentially a firing pin that's pre-cocked with a spring. Let me find one. Got my trusty Glock right here. You can see There's no hammer here in the back. Now, there are a lot of generalizations we can make about both of these guns, the pros and cons. Many of you know, huge Glock fan. They sponsored this channel. They're reasonably priced. They're extremely reliable and they work great out of the box without any modification. I love these handguns. They're some of my favorite. They come in all shapes and sizes and calibers. You can get pretty much whatever you want. Get it out of the box. You don't have to screw with it. You're good to go. I'm not telling you to get a Glock necessarily. If you're truly a beginner, Glocks don't have manual safeties. Not a bad thing. After all, especially if you're a new shooter, trying to remember, oh my God, I'm about to have to shoot this guy and I've got to disengage a safety as well. When someone's coming after you, you might freeze up. I don't know. But if you don't have a safety and don't really know what you're doing, you got a gun with a 5-pound trigger like a Glock, you might blast your sack off. But if you're confident enough to operate the safety under pressure, great. But chances are, if you're that confident enough to use a safety, you probably don't need a manual safety anyways. It's like the safety paradox. When you need it, you can't really use it. When you can use it, you probably don't need it. I'm not your dad. I'm not telling you what to do. There are people who need a safety. They need a safety on their pistol to feel good about carrying it. I'm not picking on that. After all, my first carry gun was a Glock, but I was so freaked out by the fact that it had this light trigger and no safety that I would carry it without a round in the chamber like the first year I was carrying until I got confident with it. I guess some gun is better than no gun, so I don't bully people who need like these mental training wheels, these crutches for the sake of safety, just so they'll carry the gun until they develop the skill and the confidence that they need to competently use it. But the good news is, even though I just said all that, we're going to skip safeties. We're going to go with the Revolver of handguns, the good old double action, single action, hammer fired pistol. Why do I like this? You've got a lot of the same perks that you get with a Revolver. Your first trigger pull, look at that. See, it's double action. It's cocking the hammer, releasing it long and heavy. Look here, we've got a Beretta 92, fantastic pistol. This one actually has a trigger job on it, and this trigger pull's still going to be heavy as shit. Yeah, almost 8 pounds. Let's try the SIG 226. Oh, 11.5 pounds. Almost as bad as that Revolver, right? So I like that because that operates as a safety. This gun does not have a safety. This one you can get with a safety if you want, but this one just has a decocker. We'll talk about that in a second. But again, just like the Revolver, if you're like, oh God, I might actually have to shoot this guy and I don't want to miss. I don't want to fling a shot. I don't want to slap the trigger. You can, again, look at that trigger. Boom, cock the hammer. Look at what just happened. Now, 4.5 pound trigger, substantially lighter. And in the 226, single action, 5.5 pounds on the nose. So you're giving yourself a lighter, shorter trigger press if you really need it. However, unlike Revolvers, autoloaders have slides that cycle, right? They have to eject that old shell casing. They got to load a new round in the chamber from the magazine. During that process, look at this, watch the hammer. They physically cock the hammer for you. That means your first shot, you're going to be damn sure. It's going to be long and a heavy trigger pull. So you're going to be sure whenever you send it that you meant to. But all of your follow-up shots are going to be faster and lighter. Great perk. Huge plus in my opinion. Remember how I mentioned that it takes hand strength also to cycle the slide of an autoloader? Part of the resistance comes from cocking the hammer or cocking the striker. So another perk of the double action, single action, if you cock the hammer first, it makes it a little bit easier to rack the slide. So if you have limited hand strength, if the action of cycling the slide is difficult for you, double action, single actions are attractive for that reason because you can make it a little bit easier on yourself by cocking the hammer first. And when you're done, you can decock it. And that's yet another perk of this gun. Unlike the Revolver where you have to pull the trigger and kind of ride the hammer forward, you can just hit a decocker. A lot of double action, single actions, I know this SIG does, I know this Beretta does, they've got this little lever here, and whenever you depress it, it decocks safely without firing the gun. Yet another perk, if you're holstering or you're moving the gun around from point A to point B, you can always keep your thumb pressed against the back of the hammer. Makes it really hard to pull the trigger because you're putting that forward pressure on the hammer. So that's another safety feature. Again, I'm not telling beginners to avoid striker-fired handguns or handguns with manual safeties. I'm telling you to get what you're confident with. Like, what do you think you're going to be confident with? What do you know how to shoot? That's what you should get. But if I'm giving generic, best, one-size-fits-all advice, hammer-fired autos work for beginners all the way through to experts. After all, the Navy SEALs used the SIG P226 right here for decades, and the U.S. military used the Beretta M9, the 92, for 3 decades. Beretta, very well-developed line of hammer-fired pistols, actually. It's hard to go wrong with anything they make. If you want a big bedside gun, the Beretta 92, tough to beat, one of the most reliable 9mm handguns ever made. Magazines are cheap, operating the controls pretty easy. You can get one with a safety, or as I would recommend, one with a decocker like this one, but it's just a part change if you want to go from like safety to decocker, no problem. But what's great is you can go belt and suspenders. If you want, get a hammer fired gun with a safety, use the safety until you feel comfortable, and after that you can just carry with the hammer down and the safety off. That's what I like about double action, single action hammer fired guns. They're adaptable to your skill level and they can grow with you. You can adjust how you carry them based on your confidence with the system. If you want something smaller than a duty pistol like the 92, something easier to carry concealed, light recoiling while still being pretty effective, you've got some options. You can find surplus Beretta 84BB pistols, the Cheetah and 380 ACP, $300, $400. They're absolute gems. If you want to get something new, you want to spend a little bit more money, the Beretta 80X. I love this gun. This is the modernized version of the Cheetah. It's optics ready, much better trigger, much better ergonomics. I've got both of them. I love them both. The Smith & Wesson Shield EZ, that's what my mom carries. Now, that's a striker-fired handgun, but it's made specifically to be easy to use for women and the elderly. So if you want to get a striker-fired handgun or something with a safety, something that's easy to use, look into the EZ series from Smith & Wesson. They are phenomenal. Beretta also makes the Beretta PX4 series of pistols. You can get a subcompact, full size, or an in-between kind of medium compact size, depending on what you're looking for. The PX4s, super inexpensive, but regarded as some of the most reliable and durable polymer frame handguns ever made. Like I said, it's hard to go wrong if you get a hammer-fired gun from Beretta. You're probably going to get something you like. And although SIG's taking a PR drubbing right now over the safety issues with the SIG P320, their striker-fired gun, usually any of their hammer-fired guns are going to be durable and reliable, even if you pick up an older surplus 226, 228, or 229. HK, they make great hammer-fired pistols, the P30, the USP. If you're looking for something bigger, but if you want something smaller from HK, you can get the P2000, also a hammer-fired gun. There are other good manufacturers making hammer-fired guns as well. There's tons of options. You've got Airex, you've got Springfield. Generally speaking, if you stick with a hammer-fired gun from Beretta, SIG, or HK, might be a little pricey, but it's going to be good. It's going to be durable. It's going to be reliable. It's going to be like heirloom quality. You can pass it on to your kids, whatever, and it's going to be safe. Did that all make sense? I hope so. I know this was a long video, but guys, I left a lot out of it. This is a very complex, difficult decision that carries a lot of responsibility with it. I tried to streamline it for you. Like I always say, this is a way, not the way. I'm not telling you I'm the smartest gun guy on the planet, but I have been in this business for over 20 years. I've trained with hundreds, maybe thousands of students, fellow trainees, even military units over the past couple of decades. I'm giving you the best advice that I can give you based on my experience level, knowing absolutely nothing about you or your situation, but I hope this was helpful, and I'm glad I got to make this video. I'm honored to share it with you. Thank you for watching. Take care of yourselves and be safe out there, please.